The research ship Stellar Harmony floated quietly in space, far from any star or planet. Inside the ship, 23 students from different worlds sat in a large classroom. They looked nothing like each other. Lyra was made of living crystal. Her body caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. She sat next to Vex, whose body was like green gas, held together by a special suit. Behind them, Crix clicked his sharp insect legs on the floor while his forearms took notes. At the front of the room, Professor Zithkari moved his long, thin arms as he spoke. His skin was blue-gray like old metal, and his 3 eyes blinked one at a time. "Today marks history," the professor said. His voice was soft, but carried well. "For the first time, we have a student from Earth joining our program." The students made various sounds of interest. Some chirped, others hummed, and a few made clicking noises. They had all heard stories about the humans, but none had ever seen one. "The humans are new to our galaxy community," Professor Zethkari continued. "They joined us only 5 years ago. Before that, they lived alone on their world, not knowing about the rest of us." Lyra leaned forward. She had studied many dangerous creatures from across the galaxy. In her research, she had read that humans came from a world full of predators. But she had also read that humans were not very strong or fast compared to other species. "Professor," she said, her voice like wind. "Chimes, what kind of creatures are humans? Are they like the warrior Crix? Or are they builders like the Veltar?" The professor's 3 eyes blinked slowly. "That is what we will learn together. The humans are difficult to categorize. They are not the strongest or fastest, but they have survived on a world that would kill most of us in days." The classroom door slid open with a soft hiss. All eyes turned to see their new classmate. Jake Morrison walked into the room with a big smile on his face. He was shorter than most of the students and looked fragile compared to Crix's armor-like shell or Vex's energy suit. His skin was pale pink, and he had brown hair that stuck up in places. He wore simple clothes and carried a worn backpack. "Hi, everyone," Jake said, waving his hand. "I'm Jake. Thanks for letting me join your class." The students stared at him. This was a human? This small, soft-looking creature? Lyra had expected something more impressive. The humans had built ships that could travel between stars. They had weapons that could destroy cities. But Jake looked like he might break if someone touched him too hard. "Welcome, Jake," Professor Zethkari said. "Please, tell us about yourself." Jake set his backpack down and looked around the room. He did not seem afraid or nervous, even though he was surrounded by aliens who could probably hurt him easily. "Well," Jake said, "I'm from a place called Ohio on Earth. I'm studying to be a veterinarian. That means I help sick animals get better. I love learning about different creatures and how they live." He pointed to his backpack. "I brought some pictures of animals from my world, if anyone wants to see them." Crix clicked his mandibles together. "What is the largest predator on your world?" Jake thought for a moment. "Probably a polar bear. They can weigh about 1,500 pounds and stand 10 feet tall. They're really strong." "And you are not afraid of them?" Vex asked, his gas form swirling with curiosity. Jake laughed. "Oh, I'm definitely afraid of them. I wouldn't want to meet one without protection. But we study them to understand them better. Most animals don't want to hurt you unless they're scared or protecting their babies." The students exchanged glances. This human talked about 1,000-pound predators like they were just interesting puzzles to solve. "On my world," Crix said, "we have creatures called Deathstalkers. They are 6 feet tall and can cut through metal with their claws. We kill them before they can kill us." "That makes sense," Jake said. "But have you ever tried to understand why they attack? Maybe they're just trying to survive, like everyone else." Lyra found herself fascinated. Jake seemed so calm and friendly. He did not act like a warrior or a predator. But there was something about the way he talked about dangerous creatures that made her think there was more to humans than she could see. Professor Zethkari moved to the center of the room. We will have plenty of time to learn about each other. This program lasts 6 months. We will visit research stations, study different species, and learn how life adapts to survive in our galaxy. He looked at each student. Tomorrow, we begin our first field trip. We will visit the bioresearch moon Kepler 7. There, we will observe some of the most dangerous creatures in known space. The students made excited sounds. Kepler 7 was famous for housing creatures too dangerous to study anywhere else. Jake, the professor said, will this be your first time seeing non-Earth life forms in person? Jake nodded. Yes, sir. I've seen pictures and videos, but never the real thing. I'm really excited. Lyra noticed that Jake's eyes lit up when he talked about seeing dangerous creatures. Most species would be nervous about visiting Kepler 7. But Jake seemed eager. As the class ended, the students began to leave. Lyra approached Jake, her crystal body chiming softly as she moved. Jake, she said, I study predators from across the galaxy. Would you like to share information about the creatures from your world? Jake's face brightened. That would be great. I'd love to learn about the predators you've studied too. As they walked together down the ship's corridor, Lyra felt curious about this strange human. He seemed so harmless and friendly, but he came from a world that had created some of the most advanced technology in the galaxy. How could such a soft, weak-looking creature survive on a planet full of predators? She decided she would watch Jake carefully during their trip to Kepler 7. Maybe. Then she would understand what made humans so special. The ship continued its journey through space, carrying its precious cargo of students toward their first real test. None of them knew that their trip to study the galaxy's most dangerous predators would teach them something far more important about the nature of fear, survival, and what it truly meant to be dangerous in a universe full of creatures designed to kill. The moon Kepler 7 looked like a gray rock floating in space. But Jake knew that looks could be fooling. Inside this dead-looking moon was one of the most dangerous research stations in the galaxy. The shuttle landed with a soft bump. Through the window, Jake could see the entrance to the underground facility. It looked like a simple metal door, but he knew there were dozens of security systems protecting it. Stay close together, Professor Zethkari told the students as they left the shuttle. This facility contains creatures that could kill you in seconds if they escape. The students walked through multiple security checkpoints. Each one scanned them with different types of sensors. Jake noticed that the security guards were not just any species. They were all from warrior races, carrying weapons that looked like they could cut through starship hulls. This is so exciting, Jake said to Lyra as they waited for their final clearance. I've never seen creatures from other worlds before. Lyra's crystal body flickered with concern. Jake, are you not afraid? These creatures are not like the animals on your world. They are designed by evolution to be perfect killers. Jake thought about this. Well, every animal is designed to survive. Even the dangerous ones are just trying to live their lives. I'm curious about how they do it. The final security door opened, and they entered the facility. The walls were made of some kind of white metal that hummed with energy. Jake could feel the power running through it. Dr. Hella, the station director, met them at the entrance. She was a Crix like their classmate, but much larger and scarred from old battles. Welcome to Kepler 7, she said, her voice like grinding metal. Today you will see creatures that have ended entire civilizations. We keep them here to study them and learn how to defend against them. She led them down a long corridor lined with observation windows. Behind each window was a different nightmare. In one cell, Jake saw something that looked like a living shadow with too many teeth. In another, A creature made of what appeared to be liquid metal flowed back and forth, testing the walls. Each of these creatures, Dr. Hella explained, represents an apex predator from a different part of the galaxy. They are the ultimate evolution of their species, perfect killing machines. The students walked slowly, staring at the creatures. Jake noticed that even the warrior students like Crix seemed nervous. But Jake found himself fascinated. Each creature was amazing in its own way, perfectly adapted to hunt and survive. And now, Dr. Hella said, stopping at a door marked with symbols that seemed to hurt to look at, you will see the most dangerous predator in known space. She placed her claw on a scanner, and the door slid open. Beyond was a viewing chamber, with a window that must have been 10 feet thick. On the other side of the window was darkness. This is the Void Stalker, Dr. Hella said. It is the apex predator of the galaxy. No creature has ever been found that can match its hunting ability. Jake pressed his face to the window, trying to see into the darkness. What does it look like? You cannot see it now because it is resting. The Void Stalker can phase through most materials. It feeds on bioelectrical energy, the energy that keeps living things alive. It is 12 feet tall, weighs over 800 pounds, and can move through solid matter like water. Lyra's crystal body was barely glowing now, dimmed by fear. How do you contain it? The walls of its cell are made of quantum-locked material. It cannot phase through them. We also keep it sedated most of the time. It is too dangerous to study. While fully awake, Professor Zethkari stepped forward. For today's lesson, we will observe the Void Stalker in its natural hunting state. Dr. Hella will reduce the sedation so you can see how it moves and hunts. Several students made sounds of fear. Even Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Do not worry, Dr. Hela said. You are completely safe. The creature cannot reach you here. She moved to a control panel and began pressing buttons. I am reducing the sedation now. It will take a few minutes for the creature to wake up. Jake watched the darkness behind the window. Slowly, something began to move in the shadows. At first, it was just a shifting of black against black. Then he began to see a shape. The Void Stalker was like nothing Jake had ever imagined. It was tall and thin, with long arms that ended in claws like swords. Its body seemed to be made of living shadow, but Jake could see the solid parts, the claws, the teeth, the eyes that glowed like dying stars. It's beautiful, Jake whispered. The other students stared at him. Beautiful was not a word most creatures used to describe the Void Stalker. The creature moved with fluid grace, like water flowing uphill. It seemed to barely touch the ground as it walked. Jake could see why it was considered the perfect predator. It moved like death itself. Watch how it hunts, Dr. Hella said. She pressed another button, and a small robot appeared in the cell. The robot was designed to look like a living creature, complete with fake bioelectrical energy. The Void Stalker's head turned toward the robot. Its glowing eyes focused with deadly interest. Jake watched as the creature began to stalk. It moved. Without making a sound, its body flowing like liquid shadow. The robot had no idea it was being hunted until the Void Stalker was right behind it. Then the creature struck. Its claws passed through the robot's body like it was made of air. The robot's lights flickered and died as the Void Stalker drained its energy. The whole attack took less than 3 seconds. Incredible, Jake breathed. It's like a ghost that can touch you. The Void Stalker turned and looked directly at the viewing window. Its eyes met Jake's through the thick glass. For a moment, they stared at each other. Jake felt something strange. The creature's gaze was intelligent, calculating. It was studying him just as he was studying it. Then alarms began to sound. What is happening? Professor Zethkari demanded. Dr. Hella was frantically pressing buttons on her control panel. There is a cascade failure in the containment systems. Multiple cells are losing power. The lights in the facility flickered. Jake could hear sounds from other parts of the station. Roars, screams, and the sound of metal being torn apart. "We need to evacuate immediately," Dr. Hella said. "The primary containment fields are failing." But even as she spoke, Jake heard a sound that made his blood freeze. It was the sound of claws scraping against metal. The Void Stalker was testing the walls of its cell. "The quantum locks are failing," Dr. Hella said, her voice full of terror. "It's going to break free." Jake watched as the Void Stalker pressed its claws against the wall. Where it touched, the metal began to crack. The creature was somehow breaking through the quantum locks. "Run!" Dr. Hella screamed out. The students panicked. They pushed toward the door, but it was too small for everyone to get through at once. Jake found himself pressed against the window, watching as the Void Stalker's claws cut through the wall like paper. The creature's head turned toward them again. This time, Jake saw something in its eyes that made his heart race. It was not just hunting for food. It was enjoying the hunt. The wall of the cell cracked with a sound like thunder. The Void Stalker pushed its arm through the crack, and Jake could see its claws reaching toward them. In seconds, the galaxy's most dangerous predator would be free, and there was nowhere to run. The wall exploded outward in a shower of metal and sparks. The Void Stalker stepped through the hole like it was walking through a doorway. Up close, it was even more terrifying than Jake had imagined. The creature stood 12 feet tall, its shadow-like body rippling with deadly power. Its claws were as long as Jake's arms and looked sharp enough to cut through anything. But it was the creature's eyes that made Jake's breath catch. They glowed with an intelligence that was both ancient and hungry. The students screamed and pushed toward the exit. But the door was too small, and panic made them clumsy. They fell over each other, creating a pile of bodies that blocked the way out. The Void Stalker moved toward them with slow, deliberate steps. It was not rushing because it knew they could not escape. Jake could see the creature's mouth open, revealing rows of teeth like black diamonds. Professor Zethkari stood frozen against the wall, his 3 eyes wide with terror. Dr. Hella was pressing buttons on her control panel, but nothing was working. The backup systems had failed too. The Void Stalker reached the pile of students and placed one claw on Vex's energy suit. The gas creature's form immediately began to dim as the predator drained his life force. Vex made a sound like wind escaping from a broken pipe. Lyra was trapped under 2 other students, her crystal body flickering with fear. "Help us," she whispered. Jake looked around the room. There was no way out. The security guards were probably dealing with other escaped creatures. No one was coming to help them. That was when something changed inside Jake. He had been afraid when the alarm started. He had been shocked when the creature broke free. But now, watching his classmates about to die, Jake felt something else entirely. He felt angry. It was not the quick anger of being annoyed or frustrated. It was something deeper and older, like a fire that had been waiting inside him his whole life. His breathing changed, becoming deeper and slower. His heart began to beat faster, but he felt calmer than he had in minutes. Jake stepped away from the wall and began walking toward the Void Stalker. "Hey," he said. The creature's head turned toward him. Its glowing eyes studied this small human who was walking toward it instead of running away. "Yeah, you," Jake said. His voice was different now, quieter but somehow more dangerous. "Let them go." The Void Stalker tilted its head like a confused animal. In all its centuries of hunting, no prey had ever walked toward it. No creature had ever challenged it. Jake kept walking. With each step, he felt the old anger growing stronger. It was not just his anger. It was the anger of every human who had ever been hunted, every ancestor who had refused to become prey. Creature made a sound like breaking glass mixed with screaming wind. It was trying to frighten Jake, to make him run like all the others. Jake did not run. Instead, he made a sound that had not been heard in this part of the galaxy for millions of years. He made a human war cry. It started deep in his chest and came out as a roar that seemed to shake the walls. It was the sound of a creature that had climbed to the top of the food chain on a world full of predators. It was the sound of a species that had never learned to give up. The Void Stalker took a step backward. Jake picked up a piece of metal from the broken wall. It was sharp and heavy, and when he held it, it felt like a weapon his ancestors had used. He had never trained with weapons, had never been in a fight, but something inside him knew what to do. "You want to hunt something?" Jake said, his voice now carrying a threat that made even the trapped students feel afraid. "Try hunting me." The Void Stalker released its grip on Vex and turned to face Jake fully. The creature was twice his size and had claws that could cut through starship hulls. But Jake did not care about size or claws. He cared about protecting his friends. Jake began to circle the creature, moving with steps that seemed to come from muscle memory. He did not know. He had. He was not just walking. He was hunting. The Void Stalker tried to phase through him, to drain his energy like it had done to thousands of other creatures. But Jake was ready. He moved aside at the last second and swung his metal club at the creature's head. The Void Stalker pulled back, confused. How had this small creature predicted its attack? Jake smiled. It was not the friendly smile he had shown his classmates. It was the smile of a predator that had found worthy prey. "Come on," Jake said, his eyes never leaving the creature's face. "Show me what you've got." The Void Stalker attacked again, this time with all its speed and power. Its claws cut through the air where Jake's head had been a moment before, but Jake was not there. He had dropped to one knee and swung his weapon at the creature's legs. The metal connected with a sound like breaking stone. The Void Stalker stumbled and let out a shriek of pain and surprise. Jake rolled away and came up in a crouch, his weapon ready. He was breathing hard, but his eyes were bright with something that looked almost like joy. "That hurt, didn't it?" Jake said. "Good. Now you know how it feels." The students watched in stunned silence. They had never seen anything like this. A creature that should have been prey was hunting the galaxy's apex predator, the Void Stalker. Circled Jake, its confidence shaken. It had never been hurt by prey before. It had never met a creature that fought back with such skill and determination. Jake matched its movement, staying just out of range of its claws. He was not trying to win. He knew he could not defeat the creature in direct combat. But he was doing something else, something that his ancestors had perfected over millions of years of evolution. He was making the predator afraid. The Void Stalker tried to retreat, to put distance between itself and this strange human. But Jake followed, pressing his advantage with the relentless determination of a species that had never learned when to quit. "Running away?" Jake asked. "But we were just getting started." The creature's eyes darted toward the hole in the wall, looking for escape. For the first time in its existence, the galaxy's most dangerous predator wanted to run from its prey. Jake saw the look and understood. The creature was afraid, and Jake knew that fear was the most powerful weapon of all. The Void Stalker backed toward the hole in the wall, its glowing eyes never leaving Jake. The creature was confused and frightened in ways it had never experienced. In all its centuries of perfect hunting, nothing had ever made it want to escape. Jake advanced step by step, his improvised weapon held ready. He was not running on training or experience. He was running on something deeper. Every movement came from instincts that had been carved into human DNA over millions of years of refusing to be prey. "Where are you going?" Jake asked, his voice carrying a tone that made the watching students shiver. "We're not done yet." The Void Stalker tried a different approach. It phased partially through the floor, becoming harder to hit while it moved toward Jake from below. This tactic had worked on countless other creatures, but Jake had been watching how the creature moved. He had seen the slight shimmer in the air that showed where the phased body was. When the creature tried to emerge behind him, Jake was already turning, his weapon swinging in a wide arc. The metal bar passed through the creature's partially solid form and connected with something vital. The Void Stalker screamed and solidified completely, stumbling backward. "You're not as smart as you think," Jake said. "You've been the top predator so long, you forgot how to adapt." The creature tried to intimidate Jake with its psychic shriek, the same sound that had paralyzed countless victims. The shriek was designed to trigger the deepest fear responses in living creatures. Jake felt the fear hit him like a wave. For a moment, his vision blurred and his legs almost gave out. But instead of running, he did something that had never happened in the creature's experience. He got angrier. "Is that supposed to scare me?" Jake shouted over the psychic scream. "I've heard scarier sounds from my neighbor's cat." The Void Stalker's shriek faltered. The creature was genuinely confused now. Fear was supposed to make prey helpless, not more dangerous. Jake pressed his advantage, moving closer with each step. He was not just fighting the creature, he was studying it, learning its patterns, finding its weaknesses. This was what humans did. They adapted faster than their enemies expected. The creature tried to phase through the wall to escape, but Jake anticipated this too. He threw his metal bar at the exact spot where the creature would emerge. The weapon struck the Void Stalker in the head just as it solidified. The creature fell to one knee, dark fluid dripping from a cut above its eye. It looked up at Jake with something that might have been respect mixed with terror. "You're not used to prey that fights back, are you?" Jake said. He picked up another piece of debris, a jagged chunk of the broken wall. "On my world, everything fights back. That's how we learn to survive." The Void Stalker tried one more attack, lunging forward with all its remaining strength. Its claws extended toward Jake's chest, moving faster than most creatures could see. Jake dropped flat on his back, letting the creature pass over him. As it did, he drove his new weapon upward, striking the creature in the soft area under its arm. The Void Stalker landed hard and rolled, coming up near the hole in the wall. It was breathing heavily now, and Jake could see that it was hurt. More importantly, Jake could see that it was beaten. "Had enough?" Jake asked, standing up slowly. There was something in his posture now that made him look larger than he was. Something that made him look dangerous. The creature looked at Jake, then at the hole in the wall, then back at Jake. For the first time in its existence, the galaxies. Apex Predator was calculating odds and finding them unfavorable. Jake smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not friendly either. It was the smile of a predator that had proven its dominance. "I could keep going," Jake said conversationally. "I've got all day, and I'm just getting warmed up." The Void Stalker made a sound like breaking wind chimes. It was a sound of submission, of acknowledgement that it had met something beyond its ability to defeat. The creature began to back toward the hole, moving slowly so as not to trigger another attack from Jake. "That's right," Jake said. "Walk away. Find something else to hunt. Something that won't fight back." The Void Stalker reached the hole and paused. It looked back at Jake one more time, and Jake saw something in its eyes that chilled him. It was not just fear or respect. It was recognition. The creature recognized Jake for what he was. Not just another prey animal, but something that belonged at the top of the food chain. Something that other apex predators should avoid. With a sound like tearing fabric, The Void Stalker phased through the station's walls and disappeared into the depths of the facility. Jake stood alone in the center of the room, breathing hard and still holding his weapon. The silence was so complete that he could hear his own heartbeat. Then the students began to move. Slowly, carefully, they untangled themselves from the pile by the door. Nobody spoke. They just stared at Jake like they were seeing him for the first time. Lyra was the first to find her voice. "Jake," she whispered, her crystal body flickering with confusion. "What just happened?" Jake looked down at the weapon in his hand, then at the destruction around the room. The anger was fading now, replaced by something like embarrassment. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I just ... I couldn't let it hurt you guys." Professor Zethkari approached slowly, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence. "Jake, do you realize what you just did? You made the galaxy's apex predator retreat. That creature has never been defeated in combat." Jake dropped his weapon and ran his hand through his hair. "I didn't defeat it. I just made it decide we weren't worth the trouble." But even as he said it, Jake knew that was not quite true. He had done something more than that. He had shown the creature that humans were not prey. Dr. Hella was working frantically at her control panel, trying to track the escaped creature. "It's moving toward the outer sections of the station," she said, "away from us." "It's leaving," Jake said. "It won't bother us again." The security alarms were still blaring, but Jake could hear that the sounds of fighting from other parts of the station were fading. The other escaped creatures were being recaptured. But Jake knew that the Void Stalker would not be recaptured. It had learned something today that would change how it hunted forever. It had learned that there were creatures in the galaxy that were more dangerous than it was. 3 hours later, Jake sat in the station's medical bay while Dr. Hela checked him for injuries. The other students were arranged in a semicircle around him, but they kept their distance. They looked at him differently now. "You have no major injuries," Dr. Hela said, her voice full of confusion. "A few scratches, elevated heart rate, but nothing serious." "How is this possible?" Jake shrugged. "I guess I got lucky." Professor Zethkari stepped forward. His 3 eyes were focused intently on Jake. "Jake, I need to ask you some questions. What happened in that room was not luck. It was something else entirely. I just did what felt right," Jake said. "The creature was going to hurt my friends, so I stopped it." "But how did you know how to fight it?" Lyra asked. Her crystal body was glowing brighter now, but Jake could see she was still shaken. "You have no combat training. You study animals, not warfare." Jake thought about this. "I don't know. When I saw it hurting Vex, something just ... clicked. Like I knew what to do without thinking about it." Professor Zethkari began pacing, his long limbs moving in agitated patterns. "Jake, tell us about your world. Not the pretty parts, the dangerous parts. What kind of creatures live on Earth?" Jake looked uncomfortable. "Well, there are lots of different animals. Some are dangerous, but most just want to be left alone." "Name some of the dangerous ones," Dr. Hela said. Let's see. Bears, wolves, big cats like lions and tigers. Sharks in the ocean. Poisonous snakes and spiders. Crocodiles." Jake paused. "But we don't usually fight them. We just avoid them or use tools to stay safe." The students exchanged glances. These creatures sounded terrifying to them. "What about your ancestors?" Professor Zethkari asked. "How did early humans survive on a world full of such predators?" Jake scratched his head. "Well, we weren't always the dominant species. Early humans were prey for a lot of things. We survived by being smart and working together. And by fighting." "Back," Lyra said quietly. Jake nodded. "Yeah, I guess so. Humans have always been good at fighting when we had to. We used tools, worked in groups, and never gave up." Professor Zethkari stopped pacing. Jake, I need to tell you something. What you did today has never happened before. No creature in recorded galactic history has ever made the Void Stalker retreat. Maybe other creatures just never tried, Jake said. No, Dr. Hella said firmly. We have records of the Void Stalker encountering warrior species that could break steel with their bare hands. It killed them all. We have records of it facing creatures with natural weapons that could cut through starship hulls. It killed them too. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. But I'm not stronger than those creatures. I'm not even particularly brave. That's what makes this so interesting, Professor Zethkari said. It was not your strength that defeated the creature. It was something else. Lyra moved closer, her fear finally overcome by curiosity. Jake, when you were fighting the Void Stalker, you seemed different, like you became a different person. Jake nodded slowly. I felt different, like something woke up inside me. Tell us about that feeling, the professor said. Jake struggled to find the words. It was like I remembered something I had never learned. When I saw the creature moving, I knew where it was going to be. When it attacked, I knew how to dodge. It was like my body knew what to do without my brain having to figure it out. Genetic memory, Dr. Hella said softly. Your species carries the hunting instincts of your ancestors in your DNA. All species do that, Vex said, his gaseous form swirling with confusion. But most species are either predators or prey. Humans seem to be both. Professor Zethkari nodded. That's exactly right. Most species in the galaxy evolved to fill one niche, predator or prey. But humans evolved to be adapters. You can be prey when you need to hide, and predators when you need to fight. There's something else, Jake said quietly. When I was fighting the creature, I wasn't just trying to survive. Part of me was enjoying it. The room fell silent. Even for warrior species like the Cricks, combat was about survival, not pleasure. Humans hunt for sport, Jake continued. We have entire industries built around making things more dangerous than they need to be. We climb mountains, dive with sharks, jump out of airplanes. We seek out danger because it makes us feel alive. Dr. Hella's mandibles clicked together nervously. Your species actively seeks out apex predators for entertainment? Some of us do, Jake said. We call it extreme sports. The more dangerous, the more fun. Lyra's crystal body dimmed with shock. Jake, do you realize what you're saying? You're describing a species that treats apex predators as entertainment. Jake looked around the room at all the frightened faces. I guess when you put it that way, it does sound pretty crazy. It's not crazy, Professor Zethkari said slowly. It's terrifying. Your species didn't just survive on a world full of predators. You thrived on it. You turned being hunted into a game. Dr. Hella was reviewing data on her tablet. I'm looking at the combat records from today. Jake, when you were fighting the Void Stalker, your heart rate and brain activity showed patterns we've never seen before. What kind of patterns? Jake asked. Your body was flooded with chemicals that should have made you panic and run. But instead of making you afraid, they made you more focused and aggressive. It's like your species evolved to get stronger when faced with mortal danger. Vex swirled closer. On my world, when we face predators, our natural response is to become less solid, harder to catch. We become defensive. But you became more dangerous. That's the difference, Professor Zethkari said. Most prey species evolved better ways to hide or escape. Humans evolved to become predators when cornered. Jake was quiet for a long moment. My grandfather used to tell stories about the war on Earth. He said that humans only get really dangerous when they're protecting something they care about. He called it fighting like a cornered animal, but I think he had it backwards. What do you mean? Lyra asked. I think we don't fight like cornered animals. I think cornered animals learn to fight like humans." The room fell silent again. The implications of what Jake was saying were staggering. "There's something else we need to discuss," Dr. Hella said. "The Void Stalker. It's not trying to escape the station. Our sensors show it's hiding in the abandoned sections, and it hasn't attacked anyone since your encounter." "It's afraid," Jake said simply. "The galaxy's apex predator is afraid of one human college student," Professor Zethkari said, shaking his head. "Jake, do you understand what this means for your species' future in the galactic community?" Jake looked worried. "Are other species going to be afraid of us now?" "Some might be," Lyra said honestly. "But others will want to understand. Jake, you're not just a student anymore. You're proof that humans are something completely new in our galaxy." "I don't want to be proof of anything," Jake said. "I just want to learn about animals and help them when they're hurt." Dr. Hella clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "Perhaps that's exactly why you were able to defeat the Void Stalker. You don't see yourself as a predator, so you can think like prey when you need to. But when something threatens those you care about, you become something else entirely." Professor Zethkari moved to the window that looked out into space. "I've been studying dangerous creatures for 40 years. I thought I understood what made something an apex predator. But today I learned that there are things more dangerous than perfect killing machines." "What's that?" Jake asked. "Creatures that can choose when to be killers and when to be healers. Creatures that can adapt to any situation and find a way to win." The professor turned back to Jake. "The Void Stalker is dangerous because it's the perfect predator. But you're dangerous because you're perfectly adaptable." Lyra chimed softly as she moved closer to Jake. "I want to continue studying with you, if you'll let me. I want to understand how your species thinks." "You're not afraid of me?" Jake asked. "I'm terrified of you," Lyra said honestly. "But I'm more curious than afraid, and I think that's very human of me." Jake smiled, his normal, friendly smile. "I'd like that. I want to learn about your species, too. Maybe we can figure out how to help different types of creatures understand each other better." Professor Zethkari began to laugh. It was a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Jake, you just faced down the galaxy's most dangerous predator, and you're worried about hurt feelings and helping people get along." "Well, yeah," Jake said. "What's the point of being strong if you don't use it to help others?" Dr. Hella looked at her tablet again. "I'm going to recommend that this incident be classified. The galaxy isn't ready to know that humans can make apex predators retreat." "Is that necessary?" Jake asked. "For now, yes. Your species is still new to the galactic community. If word gets out about what happened here, it could cause panic. Some species might try to attack Earth before humans become too powerful." Jake looked horrified. "But we don't want to be powerful. We just want to explore and learn and make friends." "That," said Professor Zethkari, "is exactly what makes you so dangerous. You have the power to dominate, but you choose to cooperate instead. It's in combination that most species can't understand." 6 months later, Lyra sat in her dormitory on her home world, writing her final report on the exchange program. She had filled hundreds of pages with observations about human behavior. But